They called her curse from the day she was born a silent burden to a proud and sighted people her eyes, clouded her gaze, blank her steps hesitant. She lived on the edge of the settlement, where broken machines rusted and wild dust storms howled across dry alien hills. No one visited her, and she asked for nothing. She had long learned that silence was safer than pity, and solitude less cruel than their half-hearted kindnesses. Her name was writ though few ever spoke aloud. She knew her world through heat and sound, through scent and movement, to the buzz of insects and the crunch of soil beneath her feet. She could tell when storms were coming by the shift in pressure, when machines were near by their whir, and hum, when someone lied by the tiny stutter in their voice. They thought her weak, but she knew truths they did not because she listened. Then the sky split open and fire fell to earth. The impact shook the ground and sent dust swirling through the air. For hours the others called a sign of punishment, maybe even a threat. They barred their doors and warned each other not to go near it. But she felt something, that impact, something strange and alive and calling. It took her most of a day to reach the wreck. She walked by sound, using the echo of wind and the warmth of scorched metal to guide her. The ship was twisted and burning, but inside she found him breathing, barely a human, broken and bleeding, half buried beneath debris. His breath was shallow, his heartbeat scattered like a bird in panic. He said one word before losing consciousness: Eli. She dragged him back slowly, painfully, over rock and cracked metal, through dust and wind. It took hours and more strength than she thought she had. But she brought him to her shelter, patched him with what little she had, cleaned his wounds with boiled water, and pressed dried resin from healing roots into his skin. For 3 days he drifted in and out of fever and sleep, speaking in a language she could not understand, yet his tone was soft, not like the others, not sharp or fearful. On the 4th day he opened his eyes and truly saw her. They could not speak, but they learned quickly. She showed him her hands, and he mimicked her motions. She drew words in the dirt. He repeated them clumsily. He traced letters into her palm and spoke them slowly and patiently until they meant something. She taught him her language. He taught her as soon. They could speak in pieces and half-formed thoughts and sometimes laughter. He did not ask why she never looked directly at him, why her movements were careful, why her fingers touched walls and stones before her feet. Did he watch and understood something the others never tried to do. She learned his world was far away, full of light and glass towers and oceans with creatures that glowed. He told her about the stars, how they looked from his home, and she asked him once if they ever burned the eyes to look at. He said yes, and she smiled. One day he took her hand and placed it on his face, then moved her fingers to his mouth, his eyes, his jawline. He said, "This is smiling, and this is me," and she memorized every curve. She told him of her world and how it looked to her through the echo of sound and the scent of dry wind. She described what she imagined trees might look like, what the sun felt like through the bones of her fingers. He started building something from pieces of his broken ship, a small device, thin and fragile. He would work for hours adjusting it, checking power lines and sensors and calibration, and when she asked, he simply said, "Almost ready." He said it was a lens and neural relay, a thing that might help her see again. She did not hope, not really, but she let him try, because in his voice was belief and in his hands was warmth she trusted. When the day came, she sat still and let him place the thin crown of metal around her head. It was cold against her skin, and then warm, and then she heard a sound inside her mind, soft and humming. Then light, sharp and painful and overwhelming. Her breath caught her hands, gripped the chair, and she cried out, but he was there holding her steady, saying, "Breathe, breathe, you are safe, I am here." Shapes formed, shadows, colors, motion. Depth, her brain fought it, but then accepted it, and the blur became clarity. She saw, and the first thing she truly saw was him. His face was not perfect, not symmetrical, not polished like the statues in the city square. He had scars and tired eyes and a mouth that bent with concern. But to her, he was beautiful, more than the stars, more than the glowing rocks or the slow dance of clouds across alien skies. "I can see," she whispered, her voice broken with awe. "I can see you." He smiled, then not with pride, but relief, as if he had been holding his breath since the day he fell from the sky. She spent days wandering, looking at everything again. Flowers she once knew by smell were suddenly bursts of strange color. Metal she had touched 1,000 times gleamed with new language of reflection. Her own hands were alien too, graceful and unfamiliar, until she moved them and saw them obey. The others came then, drawn by the stories of light glowing from her shelter, of a human tinkering with strange devices. They came not to celebrate her, but to inspect her, to ask if she would now serve, now that she was no longer blind, now that she was useful. She said no. She said, "I was never broken." They did not understand they offered her a place in the inner colony, again a role among the sighted elite, but she turned them away and went back to Human, who never asked her to be anything more than herself. One night, she asked him what he saw when he looked at her, not her eyes, but her. He said, "I see strength, I see music, I see someone who hears the world better than anyone who sees it." She reached out and touched his chest and said, "I want to stay with you not because you made me see, but because you saw me first." They built a new place far from the wreck and farther from the colony, a home shaped by both their worlds, part earth, part alien, quiet, and simple with a roof that opened to the stars. He taught her how to read books, real ones with old pages and faded ink. She taught him how to hear rain in the distance and how to tell time by the sound of wind against stone. When he held her at night, it was not because she needed him to guide her anymore, but because she wanted his heartbeat against her back, his warmth, his quiet presence. The device needed recharge sometimes. It was not permanent. He warned her maybe one day it would fail, but she only smiled and said, "If it does, I will not be afraid. I have already seen what matters." Years passed, and one day a storm came harder than any before. It tore at their home crack panels and shorted power lines. The device stopped working, and when she woke, everything was dark again. But she did not panic. Eli reached for her in the dark, and she found his face by memory, by instinct, by love, and she said softly, "It is all right, you do not need to fix it," because she still saw him in her mind, in her hands, in her heart. And she always would.